Well, it's good to be here today. The chocolates actually are from a little country called New Zealand, which is a little giveaway because you might be sitting there going, where's this accent from? Some people say Australia. It's not that offensive, but Kiwis like to pretend like it's offensive. Yeah, we just wanted to give you a little taste of New Zealand because the company that I'm from, that I founded, was actually founded in New Zealand. I live here in the US now. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas. Don't know why Austin people say Texas afterwards. I'm not really sure why we do that, but I'm hooked into that pattern. All right, so let's get into it. So obviously we want to talk today about the future of retail. It's a really exciting area with generative AI. A lot of what we're going to talk today about is generative AI. I'm sure that's the theme that everyone's talking about all over the place, not just at this conference. But one of the specialist areas actually our company focuses on is the intelligent interface. What is an intelligent interface? Well, it's actually a word I just made up to describe the evolution that's going to take place around how we interact with computers and machines. Human and computer design is going to go through its next massive evolution. The transformation that we've seen going from MS-DOS, I don't know if anyone's a MS-DOS fan, where we went into the world of Windows and GUI, and what that opened up from an application and experience point of view, all the way through to then when the mobile world came into our lives, and now all of a sudden we're using touch and we're actually interacting in new ways. We've got new things like GPS and other services that feed in to the experience. And then what is this intelligent interface era? What does that actually look like? How that's going to change our lives? Well, you've got a lot of analysts scrambling now because it's come on us so fast to try work out what's happening. But what is happening in the market is that the adoption rate of what this now looks like and how do users interact with AI. How does AI change the experiences? How does that generate value? How does that generate value for us as users in our everyday life? And then how does that return value back to brands? And in particular today, we'll talk about retail and how that's affecting retail, what we're seeing. I wanted today to be quite interactive. So what I think I'll do is I'll set a foundation of what is this technology, what are we seeing, and what are our insights? And then I want to spend a good amount of time giving you guys opportunity to ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. So let's talk about retail. So retail, the interesting thing with retail, if you hear this saying, the perfect storm, I think retail's in the perfect storm for leveraging this technology in a big way, which is why we're seeing that adoption rate accelerating, like what you just saw with the Gartner prediction in the previous slide. I think one of the things, obviously, that have helped that acceleration, in many ways, we've seen behavior change. Before COVID, I think we had still established behaviors in how we shopped. We would use physical locations a lot more, whereas, thinking about what COVID did and post-COVID, our behaviors went far more online. The way that we even consider purchasing, even in physical environments, is married with research and an interaction online as well. And that's still growing, and it's a massive area of growth. The other thing that we're seeing is the same tricks don't work, and that's nothing new. We've seen that through history, right? But again, we're looking at the reality that without personalization and without creating something that feels more matched to your needs versus you having to find it, if you're not in that space, you're losing in retail right now. Like, personalized experiences matter more than anything else, and AI is just feeding into this as well. And then the last thing, which we've seen all through media and everything, is actually retail is still struggling with the workforce. It's actually really hard. I'm sure there are people in this room that recognize this problem. It's very hard to retain, not just attract, but retain the workforce that we need to support the demand. So this is the perfect storm. And, that's what kind of leads us into where this next evolution is going to take place, because the human touch is really, really important in retail. The reason why the human touch is so important is because emotions are so key to buying. And a lot of technologists, a lot of technology previously has kind of played into the logic, the rationale, the pricing, the information, the product specs. But here we have a world which we have no human resources to deal with the scale of online purchasing, customer expectations, but we still need to address the emotional need. A good example, as you can see here, is doubt and intimidation. I'll talk a little bit about this with some of the case studies as well, but doubt and intimidation is something that's affected everyone in this room. At one point in time, when you went to make a buying decision, you weren't 100% confident that you were making the right decision. And how do you address that? That's an emotion, right? That's an emotion that's going on. How do you address that? The way you want to address that is that you want to actually feel like you've been understood, your needs are understood, and that through that process of being listened to, through that process of communicating your requirements, your needs, what's going on in your personal circumstances, and someone reassuring you who has a level to you of expertise, gives you that confidence and trust. So they take that doubt and intimidation and turn that into confidence and trust. And through that process, you make a buying purchase decision. Now, what's also interesting about that is scientifically, we know this to be true as well. In fact, for anyone that's like a geek like me who loves to study all the new things that we're learning about the brain, the most simplest version of this is that we have a left brain and a right brain. And what I love about this is that when we actually activate both sides of our brain, that is when we are most productive. That is how we learn the best, so we can absorb information and we can actually retain that. And it's also where we actually are feeling comfortable to make decisions. We're on fire. We feel confident we can actually buy something, we feel good about it, we can do all these things. 95% of purchasing decisions are driven by emotion. So this right side of our brain, the craziest thing is when they study like user interfaces as it stands today, very few are actually activating your right side of your brain. If you're on Amazon or e-commerce sites or you're in all sorts of online stores today, very few are actually engaging your right side of your brain. Most of it is logic and rationale driven, information and your processing. And that's where I think the biggest evolution takes place. Because to actually engage the right side of the brain, you might want to know why we have Geico geckos making jokes, or there's sports stars associated as brand ambassadors for many major brands, or if you look at how many ads on TV use a human in it. You want to know why? Human connection is the key to actually driving more emotional engagement, which is engaging the right side of your brain. Human connection is so important. We're hardwired for it. We can't avoid it. Now, some people are better at living in the logic world. They almost prefer it. And it's actually because it's a protection mechanism. But the reality is, if you're trying to engage an audience in a way that they feel valued, that it feels like a great experience, and then it's effective in creating a return, we need to activate the right side of the brain. And that cues up why the interfaces are going to change. Generative AI is going to change everything because we've been dialing in the small percentages of improvement. When we've been playing around with algorithms on e-commerce sites, or we try to figure out the way that someone walks in the store and the order they walk in and the products and the order the products showed, or if you bought this, others bought this, we can actually optimize that and we can get percentages of improvement. When we engage right side brain, we're going to play in areas where it's going to be 200 to 600% increase impact. I know this for a fact. We do this every day. And this is why it's going to change the game. That's why every product, every interface is going to reconsider how you book on Airbnb, how you would interact with Uber. If you're in some of the main sessions already this morning, you would have seen some of the way that AI will take a verbal command and do multiple things with it, right? And all of this is the change that is going to improve the way that we interact with brands and the way that we make our decisions. And that's kind of what I talked about. It's really how brands are seeing customers and servicing their customers and understanding the emotional needs. And that's what's kind of weird when people say, why do you do digital humans? they think I'm going to give a technology answer, is because it's going to be talking about embodying AI in such a way that we can relate to the machines in that way. Actually, whilst that has an element of truth, the real reason why we do digital humans. In 2016, I started with digital humans as my thematic, and people, literally I had a room of board directors who laughed at me in the room because we actually pivoted from video technology into call center into building digital humans. They're like, this is nuts. You're like watching too many movies. But the reality is that, again, the scale of online commerce and how we all interact, there's not enough humans to give that support and that level of experience. We first solved this problem for people with disabilities having to access government websites and get help and assistance. And we went and took the engagement rate up to 90% of the government engagement was done through a digital human. Only 10% was done through call center or other means. 90%. And that changed my life, because then all of a sudden I realized this has the ability to scale, this has the ability to meet people's needs, it has the ability to serve the underserved, and it actually gives the ability to make emotional connection available to everyone. I want to show you a little bit about...
For decades, we've dreamed of interacting with personified AI. The idea has been popularized by books, gaming, and film, with famous examples like Data from Star Trek and C-3PO from Star Wars. With recent developments in AI technology such as ChatGPT, realistic voice synthesis, and MetaHuman, we're now much closer to realizing that dream. But there's one critical component that's needed, and that's the ability to imbue the AI with a sense of presence and aliveness. And that's why we created Synonym, a synthetic animation system that is inspired by human behavior. Its architecture includes a combination of AI components to process contextual input and generate behavior for digital humans. At UneeQ, we believe to create truly memorable and impactful experiences, digital humans need to feel alive. They should be situationally aware. Through their perception, they're able to see the world and react accordingly. They should move naturally in a way that feels organic and alive. And they should express themselves with emotion and feeling in order to really connect with us. Every digital human is unique, and creators can take the director's chair by defining a personality for their digital human and even directly influence interactions with inline tagging. Using Synonym on our UneeQ platform, you'll be able to create a wide range of digital humans. From product geniuses that have unlimited patience and care when helping with complex buying decisions, to teachers with empathy that guide and inspire any topic of your choice. You could even create historical figures that serve as our memories, helping us learn about and experience the past. Right now, we're only scratching the surface of what's possible. With Synonym, we're bringing the metaverse to life.
So you would have seen Einstein in that video as well. Now, the interesting thing about Einstein is during COVID, I read an article which really affected me. It was about loneliness through COVID, and particularly a lot of people who were isolated from family and had no one to talk to. So I went to the team and we talked to the Hebrew University, and I said, let's create a daily quiz with Einstein for people to interact with and make it free. And so I think it was over 74 million impressions. There were millions of people interacting with Einstein. It was phenomenal just to see how people would come back daily and want to interact with a digital human. We're not trying to convince anyone today that a digital human is better than a human. That's not the message. That's not what AI is here. It is a tool, but there are huge amounts of value in creating connection with people on a regular basis where you can't do that with a human workforce. So let's talk about some customers. So I will share a couple of customers with you, Dell Technologies and L'Oreal. So Dell is quite a good one, because if you think about doubt and intimidation, not everyone who goes to buy, say, a laptop from Dell knows what a GPU is, a CPU is, what the clock processing power is, the difference between batteries. often and for a lot of people, in fact, over 50% of their market, they just know what they want to do. They just know that they either need to travel, they're gaming, it's for their kid who's going to school, they want to know that it's the lowest cost possible, but it's going to do all the things that they want, all these types of things. And what's really interesting is to build experiences like this in the past would have taken years to do so. With Dell, we built the first pilot with them in 2 weeks. We basically ingested all the data from their website. We were able to take all the documentation that we could find on the products, on the laptops. We plugged that into what is GPT, but with our own module that we have, which is called Synapse, that protects it around brand reputations and not hallucinating. It looks at things like what should a digital human talk about versus not. And this is the experience that we created.
Hi, Mark. My name is Clara. I can answer questions or make a recommendation for you. Is there anything specific I can help you with?
Hi, Clara. I'm looking for a laptop I can use while traveling and also to play games like Call of Duty.
I recommend the Dell G16 gaming laptop. It's a powerful laptop that you can use while traveling, and it's also great for gaming, including games like Call of Duty. It features a high-performance processor, a dedicated graphics card, ample memory, and fast storage. Let me know if you'd like more information or if there are any other specific requirements you have in mind.
What's the battery life like on that?
The Dell G16 gaming laptop offers a battery life of up to 10 hours, which makes it suitable for travel and extended use without needing frequent charging. However, please keep in mind that the actual battery life may vary depending on your usage and other factors. If you need even longer battery life, there are options available with extended battery capacity as well.
What about while playing Call of Duty?
While playing Call of Duty or other graphics-intensive games, the battery life of the Dell G16 gaming laptop will be shorter compared to regular usage. Typically, during gameplay, you can expect a reduced battery life ranging from 2 to 4 hours, depending on the game's demand and settings. For extended gaming sessions, it's recommended to keep the laptop plugged in for optimal performance and uninterrupted play.
That sounds great. Thanks, Clara. I'll buy that one.
You're welcome, Mark. I'm glad to hear that the Dell G16 gaming laptop meets your needs. It's a great choice for both travel and gaming.
So hopefully that gives you an impression of what a website could now look like with a digital human in it. And Dell's brand was to be very neutral, very safe. So Clara's quite straight, quite professional. We can go all the way with your brand is more sassy. A little bit of humor in there, other things like that. So you can actually just change the dial on personality with digital humans. And that's all about what we've been doing for a long time, thinking about who your target audience is, what is the brand, and what's the personality of the brand. And so this is the fun part of how we're creating more personal connection with brands through these experiences. L'Oreal was another interesting one where we actually did this in a physical location. So I wanted to show the contrast. That was an online experience. The physical experience is also interesting because as retail starts to think about the future of how do you create experiences in store, and this was a pop-up store, so it's actually very limited space. And one of the interesting things about this is normally in these pop-up locations, you might have one person attending. And the question was, if we created virtual assistants, digital humans that people could talk to and obviously interact with for their personal needs and find out what are the best products for them, would that create more sales, more engagement? Because often if someone's busy and people are walking past, you kind of go, they're busy, I'm not going to bother, right? And so what was fascinating about this was how busy it was. So they were able to support multiple customers at any time. I think there was 6 or 8, I can't remember which one it was, but we were able to actually support all those customers now walking past, engaging. Obviously sales were increased, but the engagement as well was much, much higher for having a pop-up store in a mall. And I can see that, you know, this was stage 1. The next evolution is that the interaction that you had could go with you. So even if you didn't want to make a buying decision at that time, you've now had a connection with a sales assistant that can be on your mobile phone whenever you want. So you can actually click and say, hey, I want to just follow up on that conversation. These are the things that you said. I've got some concerns. Would this be still the same answer if I gave you this information? And so these are the really cool things about customer journeys and following customers in all different mediums. And the physical environment was just such a huge success because I think interaction is so important now. Brands just talking at customers is old. Brands talking with customers, that is the evolution. That is where every brand needs to be playing, in my personal opinion. So I mentioned this before, but we are seeing incredible results through this. And, you know, it's not just a good idea. It's actually out there in the wild and it's really working. 2 to 6 times online conversion rates, 4 times upsell and cross-sell. I mean, that's a huge one. You want to know why? It's actually about establishing trust. If you deal with the emotional needs, then you build more trust. More trust means your recommendations are taken on board. Less than 9%, lower 9% cart abandonment rates, and then significantly higher digital containment. Digital containment's a really interesting one. We work with a lot of telecommunications companies as well, and one of the hardest things is people get frustrated on site, can't find what they're looking for, and so they'll leave the website and go to contact centers. And so we really spend a lot of time trying to make that experience helpful, meaningful, and a great experience too, so that they are getting all their needs online met as well. I'm actually going to skip the next few. I think it's important to note that, you know, digital humans are the interface. They still plug into all the same back-end systems that you already invest in today. It's kind of like the movie The Matrix. Any Matrix fans here? Where Neo learns Kung Fu. I now know Kung Fu. Basically, we plug digital humans into Kung Fu. Whatever Kung Fu you've been building in the data sets, the CRMs, the marketing tools, information, language models, if you've already been working with GPT, that can all plug in back into a digital human and it becomes the interface, which is how it's presented. You've been working on the what? How are you going to present that to customers? That shifts the way that they feel about the brand, that shifts the experience. Please don't just create more chatbots. People are sick of chatbots. People don't like chat. How many people here like chatbots, right? We've had so many bad experiences. It's time to change the narrative about, it's actually about creating experiences that people love. All right, so on that note, we've got a good 7.5 minutes. So that's for you guys to actually fire questions at me. All right, well, here we go. Yeah, great.
How do you balance the push and pull between people who dislike the uncanny valley look and nature of these versus getting too realistic and having people feel like they're being duped?
Yes. I think it's a great question. I think that part of our journey with this technology was really trying to test the boundaries of that and how that goes. That's why our digital humans look high fidelity, but they're not too convincing that you go, they are actually human. And the reason why we think that was important as well is because the way they move, speak, talk is still not as good as what we do, right? So then you introduce uncanny. And so polarizing interfaces are something that you really think about in design. So how do you deal with that? Well, we've dealt with it with obviously how we've thought about the way they look, the way they move, the way they feel when you interact, but not everyone's going to love that still. It's just the reality. And so you need to create choice. It's the best way to deal with it in design. So, you know, what's interesting was, I talked about Dell before, over half of their people on their site have these emotional needs that aren't being met. And it's interesting, they tend to be more interested in using a digital human than the other half. It's what I kind of call interaction needs versus transaction needs. An interaction need, I need to deal with that emotional need, which means I need to feel heard, I need a conversation. A transaction is I already know what I need, and therefore this digital human might be cool, so I still want to talk to it, but it might not be necessary, and I think it's creepy. Maybe I do. It doesn't matter, because building an interface design that adapts to the user, again, personalization, is the key. And I would bet that most of our customers who have success are having success because they're addressing the emotional need, and the digital human is still best suited for that. Good question.
So it's really interesting because you showed us example of the digital human, and then you talk about trust. I think of trust as in, I trust somebody that I know. I trust my friends and family. I'm just thinking to myself, like, will I trust like this thing on a computer that I know it's like a robot?
Yeah.
So where does that trust comes in, and how do you sort of tackle the emotional side of the equation? Is it through the interaction? Is it through the answers? I'm struggling with the trust component of it.
Yeah. And so conversational design has been very poor at this previously, which is regurgitating information at you, like trust that, right? There are some inherent things that you know just coming into it, right? Which is the digital human is not on commission. At least that's what you think. Like the motivation is that at corporate level, they've signed this off as what they believe to be the most helpful way of you understanding their products and getting access to it. When you bring humans into it, you actually bring two things. So your brain is automatically, right now, you're actually trying to assess risk with me right now. And you're doing that because you don't know my motivations, so that's also hard. But also, you don't know how I'm going to respond. So judgment could be, even asking this question now, there could be a fear of judgment in that, right? So when we interact with digital humans, we actually have much, much lower fear of judgment. That's why, like, returned soldiers with PTSD and things, that's why they engage better with an avatar first than straight into a human. And you can look that study up. It's incredible, actually, how that's happening. So trust is certainly something that you build through interaction. And I think it's once you are testing, because that's what you're doing by asking questions and those responses are coming back, you're also probably taking trust that you've already built in the brand and combining it. So if it was a brand you didn't trust and now they're responsible for giving you a digital human, I would bet that would be very, very hard. But if it's a brand that already has a level of trust for you, like a Dell, right, then it's about, can I trust that you're going to understand my needs and give me a good recommendation? And when that gets done, now you're in the zone. Now you're like, I really like this. This is good, right? And now you're going to have a higher degree of trust.
For brands like Dell, how did you decide what Clara was going to look like, and how does that play into reaching your target audience? Because I would assume that Clara does not look like the target audience for Call of Duty.
That's a great question. And I don't actually think Dell can do one digital human to meet every part of their market. It's so big, right? They've got Alienware as a brand, and Alienware is actually probably the better brand for meeting the market of Call of Duty. And so, and there's also diversity. It's another really important. Our target markets aren't just one nationality. It's not just one demographic of age, sex, race, whatever that looks like, right? So a lot of those considerations come down back to choice. So are we doing one, or are we doing many and let people choose? Or you tend to know that there's a majority of your audience right now, so you start with one that you know will probably be well received. And the design process is very much that. It's like thinking about who the target is, who is the most likely to need this, and I would say for Dell, and I don't know this, I wasn't part of that process, but I would expect that there would be an older generation that really value this. I know we worked with like AARP here in the US, and it was a massive success because all the other interfaces were actually very low engagement and intimidating. And we created an interface that was still digital. It wasn't as intimidating for them. So really interesting. But that's how we do it.
For both examples, how in the development process, how did you go about testing the accuracy of the results?
Mm-hmm. Another good questions today. So accuracy, particularly with large language models, is very different to when we first were doing it. We were working with natural language processing, which is kind of, basically supervised training. You control the answers, you're matching the intents. With large language models, now you're actually at the mercy of dynamically generated answers. And so to do that well, we needed to create guardrails all around it. And so we're actually using 3 or 4 other models that sit on top of a large language model, and they're detecting what is actually being said in the conversation, and is it appropriate to the brand guidelines, to abusive content, to everything else you can imagine that you're trying to protect. And so that in that process is basically scoring, and we're running, because it's AI, we can run like hundreds of thousands of queries in a second through it to see how it's responding, what's happening. And so we have a good data set also for testing. Is this actually going to work? Is this going to break? And then what we do is we do staged rollout. So we also then get real world interaction and see how it's responding to all the various ways that people interact, right? And then and it's not always about the wrong answer, it's actually about optimization too. It's like, hey, that was a great opportunity to recommend this sailing course right now, and we missed it. And so how do we optimize for those things as well? Are we done? You don't want to do one more? Just one more, one quick one. No, you're not gonna. There we go.
So I'm just kind of struggling with the term digital human. To me, that's a contradiction in terms. So did your team come up with this term, or where did this term come from? Because you're human or you're digital. And to combine the two makes marketers, I would think, suspect to marketing fluff, BS. No, it's not. You're one or the other. So tell me about the term digital human and where it came from, and why you choose to use that as your communication moniker, if you will.
Anybody
else feel that way?
I think it's when we were even talking about it way back at the beginning, we had people that loved it and people that hated it. And so, but what was interesting is we had the same for virtual being or a digital person or whatever it was, whatever you did, for some reason it resonates in us differently. I don't know why that is, but I think we needed something that at least made people think and enabled us to create a category. If you look at all the analysts, they're using the word digital human now. And so for us, from our brand and marketing strategy, we needed to create something that forged a category. We are digitalhumans.com. We are an all the analysts now. So it was for that. And then with customers, yeah, I think you can still get reactions and you have to navigate it. But what's quite good is sometimes they go, it's a virtual avatar. And you're like, that's cool. Then we'll call it that, But the reality is, I think I like the word human, because I believe that it connects into the human part of us, and that's also why we're called UneeQ, because I believe everyone is unique and we like to feel unique. We like to not to be a number. We don't want automation treating us just like another number. We want to feel like we matter in a moment. That's why we're called UneeQ. So, yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today. That's our details as well. And on the back of the card, if you haven't seen, there's a QR code, so you can scan it and talk to a digital human in your own time as well. So.